You look up at a city skyline, and what's the first thing you see? It isn't just the glass and steel of the skyscrapers, it's the massive, towering cranes that put them there, cutting across the clouds. But what you probably don't realize is that the person sitting hundreds of feet in the air, controlling thousands of pounds of steel with pinpoint precision, didn't just walk onto the job and hop in the seat. No, they had to climb the ladder, literally and figuratively. The journey from a greenhorn on the ground to an elite tower crane operator is one of the most demanding, high-stakes, and rewarding career paths in the world. It takes years of grit, specialized training, and nerves of absolute steel. Today, we're going to walk through every single level of a crane operator's career. We'll look at the money they make, the terrifying dangers they face, the exact steps required to go from the dirt to the sky, and why this is one of the most respected professions in the heavy construction industry. Let's start at the very bottom. You don't just become a crane operator on day one. Before you can even think about touching the controls, you have to understand how loads move, how they balance, and how to communicate effectively when lives are on the line. This is where the rigger and signal person comes in. This is level 1. As a rigger, your job is on the ground. You are the operator's eyes and ears. When a massive load of steel beams, concrete forms, or heavy machinery needs to be lifted, you are the one calculating the center of gravity, selecting the right slings, shackles, and wire ropes, and physically hooking it up. You have to understand working load limits and shock loading. If you mess up the rigging, the load shifts, drops, or worse, pulls the crane down with it. It's a massive responsibility. You are dealing with immense weights, and one frayed nylon strap or improperly seated shackle can lead to a fatal disaster. Once the load is rigged, you become the signal person. Crane operators often can't see where the load is going, especially when lifting over walls or dropping materials into a deep excavation shaft. They rely entirely on your hand signals or radio communication. You have to guide them blindly, saying things like, swing right, boom down, load up. It requires immense trust. During this phase, you are learning the language of the crane. You're watching the veterans. You're learning how wind affects a load, how different materials behave when hoisted, and the strict safety protocols that keep everyone alive. It's grueling, physical work in the mud, snow, and blazing heat. You will go home exhausted, covered in grease, and sore in places you didn't know existed. But this is the proving ground. I'm curious, for those of you who work in construction or heavy industries, did you have to start as a rigger before getting into the cab? Let me know your experience in the comments below. I always love hearing the real-world stories from the site. If you survive your time in the dirt and show that you are reliable, mathematically competent, and incredibly safety-conscious, you might get your shot at the seat, but you aren't going straight to the top of a skyscraper. You start smaller. Level 2 is typically operating boom trucks, carry decks, or small mobile cranes. This is where the real learning begins. You start studying for your certifications, like the NCCCO, National Commission for the Certification of Crane Operators, here in the United States. You learn the physics of the machine. You memorize load charts. A load chart is essentially the crane operator's Bible. It tells you exactly how much weight you can lift at a specific angle, radius, and boom length. If you misread the chart, overestimate your capacity, and try to lift a load that's too heavy for your boom angle, the crane tips over. It's that simple, and it's that unforgiving. You also have to factor in the weight of the block and the rigging itself, something rookies often forget. Operating a mobile crane is incredibly dynamic. Every day is a new job site with a new set of hazards. One day you might be lifting HVAC units onto the roof of a suburban strip mall, carefully avoiding power lines. The next day, you're pulling a wrecked semi-truck out of a steep ditch in the pouring rain. You have to learn how to set your outriggers properly on different types of soil, how to use cribbing to distribute the massive pressure of the crane's footprint, how to level the machine perfectly, and how to operate smoothly under pressure. Smoothness is everything. A good operator doesn't jerk the controls. They anticipate the swing of the load. They catch the load before it starts to pendulum. It takes hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of seat time to develop this muscle memory. You start making decent money here, often taking home between $60,000 to $80,000 a year, depending on your location, union status, and overtime. But the stress is incredibly real. Every time you pull that lever, you are liable for everything that happens on the hook. If you're finding this breakdown of the crane operator journey interesting, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps push this video to more people who might be interested in the trades. After a few years of mastering the mobile cranes, dodging power lines, and learning how to read the wind, the best operators move on to the big leagues of the ground game. Level 3 is the crawler crane and heavy lift operator. Crawlers are the massive, track-mounted lattice boom cranes you see building stadiums, massive bridges, oil refineries, and wind turbines. These machines don't have outriggers. They rely on their massive weight, their wide tracks, and huge counterweights for stability. They can crawl around the job site with a massive load on the hook, which makes them incredibly versatile but deeply dangerous if operated on uneven or uncompacted ground. The stakes at this level are astronomical. You aren't lifting AC units anymore. You are lifting multi-ton bridge sections, massive steel girders, and delicate, wildly expensive industrial equipment. The loads are heavier, the booms are significantly longer, sometimes reaching hundreds of feet, and the margin for error is razor thin. At this stage, you also have to deal with incredibly complex lifts. You might be involved in a tandem lift, where two massive cranes have to lift the same giant object in perfect synchronization. If one operator swings a little too fast or hoists a little too slow, the weight shifts drastically, potentially overloading one of the cranes and causing a catastrophic, multi-million-dollar failure. Operators at this level are highly respected. They are often the calmest, most analytical people on the job site. They have to be. When the site superintendent is screaming because the concrete pour is delayed, the crane operator has to remain entirely unfazed. They dictate the pace of the job, and they have the absolute authority to stop a lift if they feel it's unsafe. No one can override the operator. Income at this level easily crosses the six-figure mark, frequently hitting $120,000 to $150,000 a year, especially with union benefits, hazard pay, and significant overtime on major infrastructure projects. What's the craziest or most complex crane lift you've ever seen in person or online? Was it a massive bridge section, a wind turbine blade, or a high-stakes tandem lift? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and some of those engineering feats are just mind-blowing. And now, we reach the pinnacle of the profession, the job that everyone thinks of when they hear crane operator. Level 4. The tower crane operator. These are the men and women who sit in a tiny glass box, 3, 4, or even 800 feet above the city streets, building the Skyline. Getting to this level requires specialized tower crane certification, years of accident-free operating, and a proven track record of absolute reliability. Let's talk about what a day in the life actually looks like, because it is far more intense than most people realize. It starts with the climb. There are no elevators in most standard tower cranes. You climb a vertical, exposed ladder inside the mast for 20 to 30 minutes straight, carrying your lunch, your water, your radio, and your tools in a backpack. Once you are up there, you stay up there. For 10 to 12 hours. You don't come down for breaks. You don't come down to use the restroom, you use a bottle or a bucket. It is a deeply isolating environment. You are entirely alone in a cab that's about the size of a small bathroom. But the real challenge isn't the isolation, the grueling climb, or the lack of plumbing. It's the physics of the machine itself. A tower crane is essentially a giant lever. When you pick up a heavy load of concrete or steel on the long end of the jib, the entire crane bends. The mast flexes. You can literally feel the tower swaying beneath you, sometimes moving several feet in either direction. You have to learn to trust the engineering of the machine, knowing that it is designed to bend and flex without breaking. Wind is your greatest, most unpredictable enemy. High up in the city canopy, the wind speeds are significantly higher than on the ground, and they can change direction in an instant as they funnel through other skyscrapers. A sudden gust can catch a large load of plywood or drywall like a sail, spinning it out of control and threatening to rip the jib apart. Tower crane operators have to constantly monitor anemometers, wind speed indicators, in their cab, and know exactly when it is too dangerous to continue. They have to know the precise moment to shut the job down, even if millions of dollars are on the line. When your shift is over, you have to weather vane the crane, releasing the swing brake so the crane can spin freely like a weather vane with the wind, preventing it from being blown over in a storm. Operating a tower crane is a masterclass in anticipation and spatial awareness. Because the jib is so long and the cables drop down hundreds of feet, every movement you make takes a moment to translate to the load. If you stop the trolley suddenly, the load doesn't stop. It will keep swinging violently. You have to learn to catch the swing by moving the trolley perfectly in time with the pendulum motion of the load to stop it dead over the target. It's an art form that takes immense concentration. You are dropping loads into blind shafts, communicating purely by radio with riggers you can't even see, placing steel beams with millimeter precision. If you've made it this far and you have a newfound respect for the men and women operating these massive machines high above our cities, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We do deep dives into the hidden realities of the heavy industries, the trades, and the infrastructure that powers our world every single week, and you won't want to miss the next one. There is one final tier in this career path, and very few ever reach it. Level 5 is the master operator or heavy rigging consultant. After decades in the seat, managing millions of tons of material without a single major accident, an operator's knowledge becomes invaluable. These are the grizzled veterans who are called in for the impossible lifts. The lifts that require months of engineering, custom-built rigging, multi-crane synchronization, and zero margin for error. Think about lifting the spire onto the top of a new mega skyscraper, maneuvering a delicate nuclear reactor vessel into place, or assembling heavy infrastructure in a disaster zone. At this level, you might not even be sitting in the cab full-time anymore. You are consulting with the structural engineers. You are writing the detailed lift plans. You are training the next generation of elite operators. You are the definitive voice of safety and execution on a billion-dollar project. When the master operator speaks, the engineers, the site supers, and the project managers listen. The pay here is exceptional, often well over $150,000 to $200,000 a year or more as an independent consultant, but the real reward is the legacy. You can drive through a major city, point to a dozen skyscrapers, stadiums, and bridges, and know that you were the one who put the pieces together. The career of a crane operator is not for the faint of heart, and it is certainly not for the careless. It isn't just about pulling levers and enjoying the view. It's about mathematics, physics, spatial awareness, intense concentration, and an unwavering, obsessive commitment to safety. It's a career that demands respect, starting from the muddy boots of a rigger all the way up to the lonely, swaying cab of a tower crane high above the clouds. So the next time you look up at a city skyline under construction, don't just look at the building. Look at the crane, and remember the operator sitting up there, alone in the sky, balancing tons of steel on a wire, making the modern world possible.